No, because
So
if,
what he should have done is just threw it back down the hole. Tell him I released it.
yeah, but the guy came in and he said, "Would he get any?" And he said, "Yeah, they're out in the truck."
But he didn't try to keep the truck too. I've heard of that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, he didn't keep, because he told them what he had and everything. And, they were so, he had a stretch to. Waiting.
Yeah.
We have a red light on now.
Now the red light came on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. 6:30 is now here. So this is the rescheduled meeting for our December 22nd meeting. First order of business, let us please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, taking the roll call of members, Jill?
Here.
Rob?
Here.
George?
Here.
Bonnie?
Here.
Dave?
Here.
Ken?
Here.
And myself. Everyone is present here, and now we will go through the overview of the Board of Adjustment meeting here. I have a couple of announcements to make this evening. If you're in possession of a cell phone or some other type of electronic or paging device, I ask that you please put it on silent mode at this time. Also, please know that all testimony is being tape recorded for the record. If you're going to speak, you'll be asked to state your name and address for the public record. Then go ahead with your input after you've been recognized by the chair. Members of the Board of Adjustment are appointed by the County Board of Commissioners with one member from each 5 commissioner districts, 1 member at large, and 1 member appointed from the Planning Commission. I'm going to read now a brief overview of our proceedings for this evening. So I will read the variance request and open the public hearing. While I'm reading your request, I would ask that the applicant or their representative come forward and have a seat in front of the board by the microphone. The applicant or their representatives will be asked to state their name and address for the record. Environmental Services staff will provide a brief overview of the requested variance, the staff report, and if any correspondence has been received regarding the request. The applicant or their representative will then provide any input, corrections, concerns, comments, or etc. Once the applicant or their representatives have provided their testimony, the board will discuss the request and ask questions of staff or the applicant or their representatives. Upon completion of the board questions, I will ask if there is anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this request. If there is, I would ask that the person come up to the podium, state their name and address for the record, and give their testimony. When all testimony is complete, I will ask board members for a motion to close the public hearing. Once the motion is passed to close the public hearing, there will be no further input from the audience, from the applicant, or Environmental Services staff unless recognized by the chair or if one of the board members wants some type of clarification. The board will review and discuss the findings of facts. The findings are a series of questions that the board is required to answer based on the Minnesota statutes and the requirements of the ordinance. Based upon the answers to these questions, the board will either grant or deny the variance request. All questions must be answered in the affirmative by the board. And once the findings are complete, there will be a motion to approve or deny the request based upon those findings. So moving now to our first item, to consider a request from Edward and Susan Pfeiffer of Woodbury, Minnesota, from sections 5.12A1 and 5.12C of the Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance number 439 to alter the roof line and expand a legal non-conforming principal structure that is ahead of the established building line and is in the shore impact zone. Said ordinance does not allow for the expansion of a non-conforming principal structure lakeward of the established building line and wholly or partly in the shore impact zone. The affected property is lots 8, 9, 10, and 11, Vogel Shady Point, Sauk Center Township, and the property address is 40675 Sauk Lake Road in Sauk Center, Minnesota. And then the applicants, if you can please state your name and address for the record, please.
Ed Pfeiffer, 10600 Pinnacle Way, Woodbury, Minnesota.
Thank you very much. And then question, who was all able to do the visits? I'll go down the line. Ken, were you able to visit
Yes.
the site? Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
I was. George?
No.
Rob?
Yes.
Excuse me. And were you able to visit?
No.
Okay. All right, staff to your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The applicants currently own lots 8, 9, 10, and 11 of Vogel Shady Point on Sauk Lake. Vogel Shady Point was platted in 1949. The tract contains 41,608 square feet in lot area per the survey provided by the applicant. The property is in the R1 zoning district. The applicants have owned the property since 2001. There is an existing 1,096 square foot residential dwelling and a 192 square foot deck that were constructed in 1955, according to the Stearns County Assessor's records prior to the official controls. There is a 160 square foot boathouse that was constructed in 1960 and a 1,180 square foot shed that was permitted and constructed in 1988. The existing subsurface sewage treatment system that services the dwelling was permitted and constructed in 1994. The system was certified compliant in 2022. The applicants are proposing to alter the roof pitch and add dormers to the existing dwelling. The property is in the Shoreland Overlay District of Sauk Lake, which is classified recreational development. Sauk is on the list of impaired waters for nutrients and mercury in fish. The existing subsurface sewage treatment system that services the dwelling was permitted and constructed in '94 and certified compliant. The current impervious lot coverage for the property is 18% according to the survey. The proposed impervious lot coverage will not change. Alternatives to the request would be to replace the existing roof without expanding the roof pitch and adding the dormers as previously constructed prior to the official controls. Construct a new dwelling on the property that would meet the requirements of the land use and zoning ordinance. Sauk Center Township, Big Sauk Lake Association, Sauk River Watershed District, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request. We do have one correspondence that came in. It was from Kathy and Richard Schmidt at 40653 Sauk Lake Road, Sauk Center, Minnesota. We wanted to let you know we have no problem with the expansion of Edward and Susan Pfeiffer's cabin. They have plenty of room with a huge lot that they own to expand the roof line of the current cabin. They are good stewards of the lake shore, and this expansion would in no way harm the lake. Please consider us a yes to allow them to continue with the new roof. And that is all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if we could have the applicant state their name and address again, it didn't pick up.
Okay.
So if they can just redo that with the mics on.
Ed Pfeiffer, 10600 Pinnacle Way, Woodbury, Minnesota, 55129.
Susan Pfeiffer, 10600 Pinnacle Way, Woodbury, Minnesota.
All right, thank you for that. And then anything you wish to speak about your application, we're all ears.
Pardon me, I'm losing my voice. So, I guess where I'm at is we've owned the property for about 20, going on 22 years now. And really where we're at is the snow sits on this place. In fact, last week, I mean, we don't get up here a lot in the wintertime, so I'm worried right now that we have a cabin that doesn't look like that. It's crashed in. So really what we want to do is improve structural integrity. And we want to have this cabin for our family to use. We're not going to rent it out. We don't do VRBO. And what you'll see is there's 220 feet of lakeshore. Now, we keep that pretty much natural the whole year. Now, I whacked it down a little bit this fall just to be able to provide new growth for the spring. But overall, we leave that shoreline. And I'm very, as my neighbor said, I didn't even know he did that. But as my neighbor said, we're stewards of the shoreline. We appreciate the lake, and we're going to do what's right. And we just ask that we can go up with this to be able to get the water away, get the snow off of there, and provide a ventilation for the property just to be able to have it for years to come.
All right, board members, any questions for the applicants or staff?
One thing I'd add too is we didn't even think about expanding. We want to keep it natural. We want to keep it the way it is as much as we can. And again, still to provide for that structural integrity and going forward. So we talked about, hey, do we build a whole new structure? It's cost prohibitive, and it doesn't really make sense to be able to build a big house on this lot, you know, which we probably could do if we moved back a little bit, but just to me, it makes most sense just to be able to go up.
Okay. Questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, just a comment. It looks like in their application they do state that if approved, I will add rain gutters to the entire structure to better control runoff. Just wanted to call that out as a possibility.
Anybody else? All right. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak to this measure? I'd ask it 2 more times, policy. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak to the measure? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this measure? Hearing none, I'd look for a motion to close the public hearing, please.
I so move.
Motion from Dave. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
All right. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right. Now moving to our finding of facts. Number 1, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning districts in which the subject property is located. Yes or no?
It's an Bonnie Mossman, it's an R1, and additions are permitted in R1s.
All right. We got a yes from Bonnie. Jill?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so a yes for number 1. Number 2, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and the intent of the official controls or any related ordinances. Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, Rob Schweigel, I'm going to say no. The ordinance is very specific about prohibiting altering the roof line and changing the sight lines along the lake, both of which this proposal will do.
Okay. Jill?
I think the general purpose and intent of the official controls for a non-conforming structure are to kind of encourage, if it does need to be replaced, that it will be replaced in a different part or a more conforming location on the lot. In this case, it sounds like the roof itself needs to be replaced regardless. Looking at the topography of the land, it looks like that house or the cabin is lower than possibly even the road. So by increasing the roof height, I don't think will impact the view of the neighbors significantly. And it sounds like the applicants are willing to add rain gutters to it to help with the runoff. So I'm going to say yes.
Okay. George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
And I'm going to say yes with referring to 9.9.1 and also commenting that if it were needed to be removed or moved back to another location, that just looking at the area, that would mean probably a number of trees having to be removed and soil disrupted with new construction. And so I'm thinking it's probably just better off letting them build up and not disturbing any of that.
Okay. Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 2. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with a comprehensive plan. Yes or no?
Bonnie Mossman, under the Lakeshore Living Policies, number 3 is, let's see, is that the right one? Or no, number 8. The project maintains the neighborhood's residential character by promoting compatible land uses. And I think that is, and they've talked about some mitigation, which it talks about mitigation measures to address any design improvements.
Okay, yes from Bonnie. Jill?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Rob?
No, I'm going to cite Lakeshore Living Policies number 8 also, but it says the project preserves sight lines and that does not negatively impact view sheds of adjacent properties.
Okay, Ken?
I'm going to say yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's yes for number 3. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner. Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, George Fiedler, yes, a residential structure in this area is reasonable use.
Okay. Jill?
Yes, I believe it is reasonable to replace a roof on a structure.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken? And I am a yes, so that's a yes for number 4. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. Yes or no?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong. I believe that the building was built in 1955, which was before the applicants owned it. They are deciding to make the roof taller. That's their decision, not necessarily required for replacing the roof. But it makes sense that they would want a better, improved roof design so that they can better route the water off of it and other things livable there that are different in 2023 than 1955. So I'm going to say that, yes, it is unique to the property.
Okay. George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 5. Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality. Yes or no?
Dave Cameron, it will not change anything because there are other houses that have similar roof lines and stuff in the area.
Okay. Yes from Dave. Jill?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 6. Number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations. Yes or no?
I believe it does. It's related more to the livability of the house than to the economics.
All right, that's a yes from Bonnie. Jill?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Rob?
I'm going to say no. That's what the applicant said. It would be cost prohibitive to move it back where it's legally allowed.
Ken?
Yes.
Yes from Ken, and I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 7. So we would be looking for a motion to approve the variance request. And yeah, is there conditions with the rain guard? Does anybody want to attach that to that as well, or?
Well, I'd like to have a little discussion
Okay.
about that with the board,
Sure.
Because the applicant does mention rain gutters. In their testimony, they did mention being okay with having more greens on the actual shoreline. The Soil and Water Conservation District recommends just the no-mow area. They don't mention gutters at all. So I'm open to hearing what the rest of the board thinks for the recommendation.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Do these things stay with it forever, or do they, if the property owner would switch, would the regular rules change? You know, they've been doing a no-mow already pretty much, but if say in 5 years they sold it and you had a new owner, if we didn't put it in, could they come in and start mowing? I guess this is towards staff.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, anything that you grant or any condition you place will remain on the property.
Forever. Okay.
Mr. Chair, question for staff. So I understand that there is some time and effort tied to the county to enforce anything that we do add to it. So if we say a no-mow buffer, how much effort does the county have to fulfill to make sure that it's a no-mow zone?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, that's a good question. So when we do they're going to need to obviously obtain a construction site permit from our office. We will have that as any conditions that you place on the variance will be brought in on that permit as well. So it will be required that it gets done. Our final inspection when the property is done, we generally do those during the winter time or late fall or early spring. Now, in situations where you guys put those types of conditions, we have to go when we can see. We can't go out there right now because there's 14 inches of snow covering this. But we do try to make a visit when stuff is growing to verify that it is there. Now, once the project is finished and we have done that, I'm going to be honest with you, we don't go out there every year to make sure it's being done. You know, if they come in and apply for a permit again, we're going to look and see, is it still there? If it's not, we're going to make them bring it back. But we don't have the wherewithal to be out verifying that all of this stays in place, to be honest with you. But that being said, if the neighbors complain, maybe they're watching this and they're seeing that, we have a lot of watchdogs in the lakes areas that will call our office and say, hey, you know, they were supposed to have a no-mow buffer and they're mowing right down to the lake. If we get that complaint, again, we're going to go out and verify and we're going to make sure it gets started again. But really, it's, you know, I agree with you. These are good things, but just know that when properties change, you know, if the sellers don't let them know, they're probably not going to know that they, you know, have to have that. But what will happen is, again, they might come in and apply for a permit. We're going to go out and we're going to say, oh, just so you know, the previous owners had a no-mow buffer, and oh, by the way, you need to reestablish it. So we try as much as we can. We just don't have the wherewithal to be out there every year to make sure that this is happening and staying. So we do the best we can, really.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure it wasn't putting too much of a burden on staff to have to check up on it.
Right. And that's kind of why we've always said, don't grant it with the assumption that this is going to be there. If you don't think the variance should be granted, then don't grant it just because of a buffer being done, because we have no way to verify that this is staying the way it is. These buffers are added. So if you can grant the variance, and then put the condition on. You know what I mean? So don't make the assumption that, well, I'm getting this buffer and that's going to be the be-all, end-all, because it's just so hard for us to verify that that buffer is staying.
So Mr. Chair, my comments about, I think the buffer is a good idea. I don't think the gutters are necessary. The structure, the footprint's not changing. about the same amount of water is going to come off of as it did before, and I'm okay without gutters.
The way it looks, there are gutters on their present house now, so they're just kind of replacing gutters.
We have gutters in the back, not in the front.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the applicant.
Yes.
You said that you basically have a no-mow zone now.
Yep.
Yeah,
How far back does that go?
Well, just so you know, too, I mean, like we've been there 20, whatever, we raised our children going, and we've never even had a beach. I mean, the kids, we've had that buffer all these years. We have never mowed down that. I mean, it's just been,
Between the house and the lake?
yeah,
It's
for
probably-
sure.
If I were to guess, it'd be about,
Almost 4 feet.
no, it's more than that. It's like 10 feet. It's probably,
all the way up to that.
yeah, because there's rocks, there's, what do they call it, where they mix the big rocks and boulders in there? Riprap, yeah, that's in there with the soil and what have you. And it goes back, I don't know if you can see it on there, but it goes back some places 10 feet, some places 6 feet.
Yeah, we just have the spot where our dock goes out.
Yeah, so we would maintain that still so we can have access, right? Whatever it is, 10, 15 feet, 20. But that whole, and we have a path between, like along, so we can get to the neighbors. Other than that, there's like 10 feet of that, 8 to 10 feet that are just vegetation, natural, and rocks. Which we maintain, which we would say, I would keep that, and continue with that.
Okay, so then, Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve a variance from zoning ordinance number 439 to alter the roof line and expand a legal non-conforming principal structure ahead of the established building line and in the shore impact zone, with the addition that they will maintain at least 10 feet no-mow buffer area along the shoreline, excluding the lake access around the dock.
Everybody get that? Thank you. Can we get we have a motion from Jill, second?
This is George. I'll second that.
All right, a second from George. The remaining votes, Dave,
Yes.
Bonnie,
Yes.
Rob,
No.
Ken.
Yes.
All right, and with that, the motion for the variance is granted. So if you have any questions, please contact staff during regular business hours. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now moving to item agenda number 2, to consider a request from Raymond and Catherine Malley of Sauk Center, Minnesota, from section 6.21A of Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance number 439 to construct a residential accessory structure with a sidewall height no greater than 10 feet and a building height greater than 16 feet on a property within a lot area of 0.5 to 0.99 acres in the Shoreland Overlay District. Said ordinance allows for the residential accessory structure with a maximum sidewall of 10 feet and a building height of 16 feet for a property with a lot area of 0.5 to 0.99 acres in the Shoreland Overlay District. The affected property are lots 22 and 23 of Vogel Shady Point and lot 3, block 2 of the Countryside Estates, Sauk Center Township, and the address is 40805 Sauk Lake Road in Sauk Center, Minnesota. And then the applicants, please come down, state your name and address for the public record, please, and just make sure the microphone's on.
My name's Ray Malley, 40805 Sauk Lake Road. That's in Sauk Center.
Perfect. And then before I go to staff, I'll just do a roll call of the folks that have been able on the board to visit. Jill.
No.
George.
No.
Dave.
Yes.
Bonnie.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So staff, to your report. Yep.
Okay. The applicants currently own lots 22 and 23 of Vogel's Shady Point and lot 3, block 2 of Countryside Estates on Sauk Lake in Sauk Center Township. Vogel's Shady Point was platted in 1949 and Countryside Estates was platted in 1976. Lot 3, Block 2 of Countryside Estates contains 40,500 square feet, or not 0.919 acres in lot area per the plat map. Lot 22 and Lot 23 of Vogel Shady Point are not considered in this request. The property is zoned R1. The applicants purchased the property in 2010. Let me just zoom down a little bit here. The residential accessory structure standards in the Shoreland Overlay District for this lot fall between 0.5 and 0.99 acres. So they're allowed 2 residential accessory structures with a maximum sidewall height of 10 feet, with a maximum building height of 16 feet, and a cumulative area of 1,200 square feet. The applicants are asking to construct an accessory structure building with a 12-foot sidewall height and a 20-foot building height, and he was in front of this board about 3 months ago, and in the month of October, and was asking for more accessory area as well, but he has now changed his request to meet the 1,200 square feet that's allowed, and is only asking for additional sidewall height and building height. The subsurface sewage treatment system that services the property was permitted and installed in 1986. The system was certified compliant in 2022 by a licensed septic inspector. The property is in the Shoreland Overlay District of Sauk Lake, which is classified recreational development. Sauk is on the list of impaired waters for nutrients in mercury and fish. The impervious lot coverage is not really consideration at this point because there really is nothing on this property, on this back lot at this point. An alternative to the request would be to construct a residential accessory structure that does not exceed the maximum 10-foot sidewall height, 16-foot building height that is allowed per the ordinance. Sauk Center Township, Big Sauk Lake Association, Sauk River Watershed District, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request. I have also received a couple of correspondence with regards to this request. The first one is from Brad and Christy Kirchhoff at 40839 Sauk Lake Road, Sauk Center, Minnesota. Thank you for taking the time and visiting with me on the phone Wednesday, December 7th. We received your letter dated December 2nd, 2022 in the mail in reference to a variance request from Raymond and Catherine Malley at 40805 Sauk Lake Road, Sauk Center. As I mentioned in the last response, back in October, my wife Chrissy and I own a cabin 2 houses west from Ray and Kathy along Sauk Lake. I have had the opportunity to work with the county and city in the past. In doing so, I totally understand the requirements to notify property owners that may be impacted from authorization of non-conforming building variance requests. Thank you for sending this notice and continuing to keep people informed. In regards to Ray and Kathy's request, we have talked with Ray and Kathy, and I had the opportunity to visit with Jamie in reference to this new request. Although we were in favor of the recent variance request, we certainly are in favor of this request, which is a minimal increase in sidewall height and overall height from the current allowed height in the Shoreland Overlay District. Although the plans show for taller sidewalls and higher peak roof than what is currently allowed in ordinance, we fully support Ray and Kathy's request and intent. There appears to be multiple buildings/sheds that have high sidewalls or higher overall height than proposed. The proposed building site is across from the road as significant distance from the water. It makes sense as to what the Malleys are requesting. Ray and Kathy are truck drivers, and having their truck in the shed not only assists in the winter months, but actually will improve the aesthetics of the area. Christy and I are in favor of granting the request/variance. We ask that the request be considered, and please let us know if we can assist in any way. Please forward my comments to the full board and include in the record our support of this variance. Feel free to call my cell phone. Lastly, please send me the date, time, and login information for remote access. And again, that was Brad and Christy Kirchhoff, 40839 Sauk Lake Road. The second one we have is from Jesse Keller. Okay, Daniel and Jesse Keller, Jeremy and Leanne Sunderman, and Jenna Sunderman, to whom this may concern. We, the property owners at 40866 and 40888 Sauk Lake Road, Sauk Center, vote to approve this variance for Raymond and Catherine Malley, 40805 Sauk Lake Road, Sauk Center, Minnesota. And again, that was Daniel and Jessica Keller, Jeremy and Leanne Sunderman, and Jenna Sunderman. And that is all I have.
All right, applicant, to your request, if you have anything you want to say.
I don't know if I need to re-explain myself because a lot of you guys, I did not see you here the last time I was here. But basically, I'm coming back for my livelihood. That's what we were trying to build, this shed. Of course, I wanted something bigger. That's what happened first when I came here. So I heard a lot of people say something about the square footage, and we were able to come down to smaller. It's not working. Okay. We were able to have the square footage smaller, which I mean, it'll work. But the only way to get the semi in there is to have the sidewalls and the overall height. Other than that, I really don't have anything else to say about it. If you guys have any questions, go from there, I guess.
Okay. Board members, questions for staff or the applicant?
Mr. Chairman, I've looked at this situation, and also there are many sheds in this same area that are much larger than the proposed shed right now. And I think that it's far enough away from the lake that, you know, it shouldn't bother anything, you know. I mean, yeah, go ahead.
And to add on to what Dave was saying, you know, the area where they're placing it seems to be relatively a flat area. So runoff to the lake is probably not, you know, a huge concern. And also I noticed on this property, if you look at the neighboring properties on both sides, there's significant tree lines that will kind of border as far as a site from those properties. And they placed it as far back on the property as they could to be away from the road and the other houses. And behind it is a farm field, which probably isn't going to bother the farmer too much. So I would agree with Dave that, you know, it looks like something that would work. And also I looked at the numbers, and he's only 0.08 of an acre below what the next level would be that would allow them to have it. So it's very close to, he could have had it without a variance.
And the square footage I could have had.
Yep.
If I would have had more acre too.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
I would guess that in some surveys there's an 0.08 of an acre deviation.
Error.
You know.
Anybody? All right. Opening it up to the public. Is there somebody online or in the audience wishing to speak to this at all? Anyone wishing to? Yep. Go ahead. Please come forward and then address. Have your name and address for the public record, please.
Yes, I am Amy Sherby. My address is 3602 County Road 172, Freetonia, 6331. Having a very high quality shed for your semi is very beneficial. Aesthetically, it looks nice. And I just wanted to say that there are many benefits to having a shed. You don't have stuff laying outside while it's all inside.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak to the variance request? Hearing none, can I get a motion to close the public hearing, please?
Jill DeLong, I so move to close it.
All right. A motion from Jill. A second. Anyone?
I'll second.
Second from Dave. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Sign. All right, motion carries. Now to our finding of facts. The proposed use is allowed in the zoning districts in which the subject property is located, yes or no?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, it is zoned R1 and an accessory building is allowed in R1 zones.
All right, a yes from Jill. George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so that's a yes for number 1. Number 2, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls, yes or no?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, I believe that the general purpose and intent of the official controls is not to have too large of accessory buildings on too small of lots. As this accessory building that he's requesting is only an 8% variance from what would be allowed, or the size of the lot is only 8% smaller than what should be allowed. I believe that, yes, it is in harmony with the general purposes.
All right, a yes from Jill. George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
And Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 2. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, Rob Schweigel, I'm going to say yes under the business goals. Number 1, to increase the county's regional prosperity by being globally competitive and a business-friendly region.
Okay, a yes from Rob. Jill?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 3. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, yes or no?
Mr. Chair, George Fiedler, having an accessory building for this purpose is a reasonable request.
Okay, yes from George. Jill?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
And Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 4. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner, yes or no?
Well, Bonnie Mossman, I would say yes, due to the fact that it's just minimally less than what would be required for the next level up.
All right, a yes from Bonnie. Jill?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
And Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that would be a yes for number 5. Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality, yes or no?
Mr. Chair, George Fiedler, yes, it will maintain the essential character. There are other structures even larger than this one, and I think it will be okay.
All right, a yes from George. Jill?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob? Yes. Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 6. And number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations, yes or no?
Dave Gavin, I don't believe economics were part of this discussion.
All right, Dave, yes. Jill?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
And Ken?
Yes.
I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 7, and so I would be looking for a motion to approve the variance request.
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, I would move that we approve a variance from zoning ordinance number 439 to construct a residential accessory structure with a 12-foot sidewall height and a 20-foot building height on a property with a lot area of 0.5 to 0.99 acres in the Shoreland Overlay District.
All right, a motion from Jill. A second?
I'll second.
Second from Dave. The remaining votes. George?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I am a yes. So with that, your variance is approved. Any questions, please contact staff during regular business hours.
I
Thank
do
you.
appreciate it.
Yep. All right. Moving on now to item agenda number 3. To consider a request from Gary and Lynn Olson of Avon, Minnesota from sections 9.99A of the Stearns County Land Use and Zoning Ordinance number 439 to construct a residential accessory structure less than 30 feet from a private road easement. Said ordinance requires a building setback of 30 feet to a private road easement, and the affected property is 1 .03A of Lot 1, Cedar Knoll Plat 2, and that is in Holding Township, and that is the property address is 38737 Tamarack Lane in Avon, Minnesota. And then if I can get your name and address for the public record, please.
Gary Olson, 38737 Tamarack Lane,
All right.
Avon.
Thank you very much. And then doing a roll call of members who are able to visit the site. Jill.
No.
George.
No.
Dave.
Yes.
Bonnie.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
And I was able to visit as well. So staff, with that, to your report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The applicants currently own Lot 1 of Cedar Knoll Plat 2 and part of Government Lot 3. Cedar Knoll Plat 2 was platted in 1966. The tract contains a lot area of 44,862 square feet, with 30,725 square feet of that being east of the private road easement. The property is in the R1 zoning district. The applicants purchased the property in 2020. There is an existing 2,474 square foot residential dwelling with attached garage and a 220 square foot deck that were permitted and constructed in 1985 and 2022. The majority of the property to the east of the private road easement has been delineated as wetland. The Wetland Conservation Act allows for a one-time 400 square foot de minimis exemption. Under this exemption, the property owner would be allowed to fill or impact 400 square feet of wetland without requiring a replacement plan. The applicants are proposing the structure in this location to avoid filling or impacting more wetland than the de minimis would allow. The property is in the shoreland and floodplain overlay district of Two Rivers Lake, which is classified recreational development. Two Rivers is on the list of impaired waters for nutrients and mercury in fish. The subsurface sewage treatment system was installed in 1985 and 2020. The system was certified compliant. The current impervious lot coverage for the property is 23.8%. The proposed impervious lot coverage when the project is complete will remain 23.8%. Holding Township, Friends of the Two Rivers Lake, the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, and property owners within 500 feet have been notified of this request, and we did not receive any actually, I don't know. We did have, we had letters of consent that were provided by the applicant. We have the three neighbors who also share this roadway or this easement have signed that they're good with this. I don't know if I don't think we got you this, so if anybody wants to see this, I can bring this up for you guys to take a look at. But outside of that, there were no other correspondence that were emailed or mailed in.
Great, thank you. Applicant, anything you wish to say to the board about your variance request?
Yeah. So those are there's four of us that, those four properties are the four properties that were part of the easement when it was created back in, I have it here, it's very thick, but was it, back in the 70s or 80s? Yeah. So I paid to have the wetland delineated. That's the green line, because I knew it was going to be really, it was going to be challenging to try to, keep it to 400 square feet or less of impacted wetland. And the further I go back from the easement, then it pushes me into the wetland, and then I end up having to put in fill to be able to get to a detached garage, which uses more wetlands. So the 6 feet is kind of a compromise to stay under that 400 square feet. So we're proposing the 20 by 24. Initially, I would have liked a lot larger. There's a lot larger ones in the neighboring areas, but then I found out with some of the ordinances, the 400 square feet was one, and then I believe there's another one that says if you're over 500 square feet, you have to have a 4-foot perimeter, 15 foot. But which would have used up more 400 square feet, not including the garage. So So I had to stay less than 500 total square feet. So that's how I came up with the 20 by 24. That's the largest I'd be able to go. I would be able to meet the 16-foot maximum height, which is an ordinance. And the reason I want this is just for a second vehicle. We purchased this as a lake cabin in 2020, and we liked it so much up there, we decided to make it our permanent residence, so we sold our house. And I'm about 3 months from retirement, and want a place to be able to park my pickup and maybe get a riding lawnmower and have a place to store it. Like Jamie said, the drive is private, so 4 properties, and I'm not sure if that makes a difference or not, but we actually maintain the road, so we have to do the snow plowing and so on. And I'm the second to the last one. Mike Panic is the end. So, if this is granted, then we'll be able to meet all the other requirements. The 400 square feet would be less than 500, so we won't need the perimeter. And the overall height would be 16 feet or less. And I'm not sure when you visited if there was snow on the ground. There was the one photo with the orange line. Oh, that one. No, I'm sorry, it isn't orange, but I painted an orange line on there, and again, it gets covered up by snow, but the first black line is the 33 foot from the middle of the road, and then the 6 foot back, the second line would show where the detached structure would start. So it's about 3 foot behind that kind of tree line. And then, of course, the back is all swamp.
All right, any questions from board members for the staff or the applicant?
Yes, clarification from staff. Is this road indeed a private road?
It is a private easement, yes.
It's a private road, so there are restrictions for easements on private roads.
There are restrictions, correct. Yep.
So George, this would be like off of your driveway. They're telling you how far back, because that's basically what this is their long driveway.
Yeah.
But it is dedicated for those people
right.
who, to access. And so had this been a township like yours, George, you guys, or a township that does this type of stuff, they would be going to them instead, but right. Because the township doesn't do it, they have to come to us.
Yeah, I just wanted clarification. So yep. I didn't know that the county had provisions like this for private roads.
Private road easements.
What if, just like you were saying, what if an individual owns the land and has a driveway, quarter-mile long driveway? Are there still these restrictions in place?
Yes, there still are.
So if I had a quarter-mile long driveway and my residence was at the end of the driveway and I wanted to put a garage somewhere along that driveway, I'd have to follow county procedures to stay a distance off the road.
Only if it's dedicated as an easement.
Okay.
Because it's giving access. That easement is giving the neighbor that's further down the road the ability to cross his property to get to their property. And so just having a private driveway, if you own the private driveway and there's not an easement, that would not apply. But because there is a dedicated road easement that's running across his property, the road setbacks come into play to that easement.
And he owns the road, and the others just have easements off of it?
So he has an easement to go across the neighbor to the other side's property to get to his. So this is just one dedicated road easement for all those 4 properties to access from the actual platted road, if that makes sense.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
But I have a question. Wouldn't, if like all the neighbors on that road agreed to an addendum to the easement, wouldn't that negate the county being involved in it? You know, if they all, because they've all signed those forms, that really would be kind of an addendum to the easement. I mean, why is the county, I'm just still confused about why is the county involved if everybody on the easement has signed off on it and agrees to it. It's a private contract is kind of what I look at it as.
Yeah. So the road easement is in our ordinance is looked at no different than just a township road. You're held to the same requirements as you are to a township road. And so I guess I can't speak to the manner of whether or not they can alter that easement to all, you know, allow something like that, Shelley. Maybe you can speak to that or not.
Mr. Chair, Member Mossman, some of the situations that come up, this is somewhat unusual because there's not that many people, but there are a lot of easements where there are a significant number of people that live along them, and getting everybody to agree to things is not always easy, which is why the county put in standards. Not every county has those standards that say there are setbacks to private road easements. That does not occur everywhere. It's one that the county has because we have so many of them where people want to build right next to them. And then once they build right next to them, maintaining that becomes an issue. And then inevitably the county gets involved some way, shape, or form. And that's why we said, let's just put some standards in to keep it, everybody can access that private easement. But not every township, not every county has the same standards. But in this county, we've decided to do that.
And yeah, I understand that. I guess my thought process is then if the county is regulating it, then shouldn't the county maintain it? Or the township or whoever. Just a comment, I know it doesn't relate to this, but that's my train of thought, is if they're going to regulate it, they should maintain it.
So I have an additional clarification question for staff. So if the owner came in and said, was abiding by the distance and he wanted to build on the wetland area, could he do it?
Mr. Chair, Member Fiedler, no, because we have other standards. We have floodplain standards and we have Wetland Conservation Act, which regulates any draining and filling of wetlands within the county, or I should say within the state, because the Wetland Conservation Act covers the state. And then the floodplain standards. And this floodplain standards was the other portion that regulated the size. So, Jamie, do you want to explain the size of this for that floodplain standard? I'm trying to think, what is the size limitation?
So 500 feet or less, if the structure is going to be 500 feet or less, 500 square feet or less, which he is proposing, that's why he's keeping it at the 400, is to, or 480, then he doesn't have to fill 15 feet around the structure. If it's 500 feet or more, then 500 square feet or more, then he would have to have a 15-foot area around that structure that would be 1 foot, at least 1 foot, or up to 1 foot below the regulatory flood protection elevation. And the thought is that he also has to have electricity that is above the regulatory flood protection elevation if he's going to put electricity in there. So the thought is these minimal structures, you're not going to have a lot of flood damage if the waters were to come up, you know, to that 100-year floodplain level. And so
with his proposal of a 480 square foot, again, maybe I missed this. If he abided by the setback, could he build that 480 square foot?
He would have to go through a wetland replacement plan to do that. If something like that would be granted, I guess that would be that would be our wetland staff who would have to, you know, go through that process. But the way he's doing it right now, he is able to stay within their de minimis that they're allowed. You're allowed, you know, 400 square foot exemption from the Wetland Conservation Act
In shoreland.
in shoreland.
Mr. Chair and Member Fiedler, the Wetland Conservation Act does ask you to minimize your request first. So first avoid if you can, then minimize to the greatest extent possible, and then do a replacement for anything that you couldn't minimize or avoid. So that's why these all play together. So you have shoreland, floodplain, and the Wetland Conservation Act all kind of working together. And then to top it off, you have the easement, which throws it back. So there's just a lot of factors and a lot of challenges on this site.
Can I make a clarification? Could you please go back one slide where it shows the structure and the wetland? No. Yes, that one. Okay, so I'm not sure if it's confusing or not, but okay. Yeah, so the structure is 480 square feet, so that's over the 400, but it's less than 400 square feet past this green wetland boundary. And it actually details it out right here. It says it's like 380 or something like that. So again, that was part of why I chose the 6 feet, so I can stay on some of it. It starts on a non-wetland area, and it's only the part that's over the line that counts against the 400. Thank you.
So I bet you're happy you own that wetland, aren't you?
And there's no other place to put it. My lot's very small. 1/3 of it is on the west side of the road, and my lot actually goes way back into the wetland.
Mr. Chair, question for staff. Could I get some more understanding of the 30 feet setback for the private easement? Is that for safety? Is that for snow removal? Or what's the purpose of the 30 feet?
Basically, it's all of the above. That's the reason we have road setbacks, is for safety. It also gives, room to plow the snow. And, obviously there's not a lot of road traffic down here, but we want to have structures away from the road in case cars go off the road. Now, they're probably not driving 30 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour down this easement, but that is the reasoning for those structure setbacks.
Thank you.
It would appear to me that none of those would apply in this particular situation.
Any other questions, comments from board members to staff or the applicant? Hearing none, anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this variance request? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to the variance request? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to the variance request? Hearing none, can I get a motion to close the public hearing, please?
I so move.
A motion from Dave. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
Second from George. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries, and we now move to our finding of fact questions. The proposed use is allowed in the zoning districts in which the subject property is located, yes or no?
Bonnie Mossman, yes, under Lakeshore Living, the accessory buildings are permitted.
Okay. Yes from Bonnie. Jill?
Yes.
George?
No.
Dave?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Right, and I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number one. Number two, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls, yes or no?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to say no. It doesn't abide by the ordinance of a 30-foot setback.
That's a no from George. Jill?
No.
No. Dave?
I would say yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number two. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, Rob Schweigel, I'm going to say yes under nature goals number 1 and 2.
Okay. Jill?
I don't know yet.
Okay, I can come back. George?
No.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
I'm going to say yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And Jill, whenever you're ready. No worries.
I'd like to request for those voting yes, what the comprehensive plan number is that corresponds to yes.
She wants to know out of here.
That's for number 3, right?
Number 3, yeah.
That's going to be.
So I'm looking at lakeshore living policies, but this isn't the lakeshore, it's wetlands. So I don't know that that really applies there.
Member DeLong, Rob Schweigel, I noted nature goals 1 and 2, preserve, restore, protect important natural systems and natural resources. Number 2 would be ensure the reasonable and responsible use of the county's natural resources, including land, surface, groundwater, minerals, open space, wetlands, wildlife, and woodlands. And by staying within that 400 square foot guideline or requirement, I'm thinking that he's doing both of those.
Right, my thought is if he had to build it 30 feet back, he'd have to fill in the first 30 feet plus whatever the building would be. So he'd have to.
Then plus 15 feet around.
Plus 15 feet.
He would disturb a lot more wetlands.
Right, he's disturbing as little wetland as possible.
I'm going to say no under connectivity goals number 1, to develop and maintain a transportation system that promotes the safety, mobility, and access of all users.
All right, so that's a no from Jill. Yes for number 3. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, yes or no?
Mr. Chair, George Fiedler, yes, I think having an accessory building is a reasonable use.
Okay, Jill?
I'm going to say no, because I don't know that it's reasonable. You know, we see a lot of weird shaped lots with a lot of interesting constraints, and sometimes it's just not a good fit. Sometimes you just don't build that giant house on that lot that has lots of hills and is right on the lake. I feel like it's not necessarily reasonable. If there's so much wetlands and you can't build it reasonably within the wetlands, within your restrictions, so instead you have to encroach upon an easement that your neighbor requires access to due to safety concerns as well, I don't know that that's reasonable. So I'm going to say no.
Okay, no from Jill. Dave?
I vote yes.
Bonnie?
And I'm going to vote yes with the reasoning that the neighbors have all, given their okay already for it. And he has kept the size of the building down to a small scale.
Okay, Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that would be a yes for number 4. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property not created by the landowner. Yes or no?
Bonnie Mossman, I'm going to say yes because of the proximity to the wetland, and trying to protect the wetland makes a unique situation here.
Okay, a yes from Bonnie. Jill?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay. George?
Yes.
Okay. Dave?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 5. Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality, yes or no?
Jill DeLong, I'm going to say no. There isn't currently a garage or a shed or accessory building in those wetlands. We're going to create that. Also, right now, we do have enough clearance for that easement And by building this building right next to the road, that's also going to change the character of that neighborhood. So I'm going to say no.
Okay. No from Jill. George.
No.
Dave.
I'll say yes. I think that in some cases they could take, if somebody would mitigate the wetlands, they could have used a much bigger area of the wetlands as long as they would buy things to replace it. So I'll say yes. He's minimizing the impact.
All right. Yes from Dave. Bonnie.
And I'm going to say yes, due to the fact there's really only one house beyond his. Am I correct? So I don't think, the safety or the accessibility is, really a major issue.
Okay. Yes from Bonnie. Rob.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 6. Number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations, yes or no?
I would say yes, it does. It involves just the physical placement of the building, not necessarily economics.
All right. Yes from Bonnie. Jill.
Yes.
George.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Rob.
Yes.
Ken.
Yes.
And I am a yes, so that's a yes for number 7. So with all those questions being answered in the affirmative, I look for a motion to grant the variance request.
Mr. Chair, before we do that, I'd just like to point out we're trying to balance here the road ordinance about safety and those things we talked about, and the wetlands. And in my mind, the safety concerns of the road outweighs the need for the wetlands. I just want to get that on the record. This is a difficult situation.
Okay. Anyone willing to offer a motion for this variance request?
Well, I'll move to approve the variance request to build a 20 by 24 foot residential accessory structure 6 feet from the private road easement.
All right, we have a motion from Ken. A second from anyone?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second it.
Second from Rob. All right, the remaining votes. Jill.
No.
George.
No.
Dave.
Yes.
Bonnie.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. So with that, the variance is granted. Have any questions, please do contact staff during their regular business hours. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chair, I have one question for staff then. In a situation like this, then, is this variance then attached to their easement agreement, or so that future it runs with the land? Okay,
It runs
so that
with
future
the land, but will not be anywhere in their easement agreement, because this
Okay.
is not going in the easement. It's 6 feet from the easement.
Okay, so if somebody else buys, one of the lots on either side of him, will they be made aware of? I suppose they'll see the building there, but,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.
Oh, it's Rock. Rock Ruling.
That's right. Okay. Moving to agenda item number 4, to consider a variance request from Rock and Gail Ruland of Richmond, Minnesota, from section 6.95 of Stearns County Zoning Ordinance 439 to construct a dwelling 550 feet from an animal feedlot registered for 100 animal units or more. Said ordinance requires a setback of 700 feet from a dwelling to an animal feedlot registered for 100 animal units or more. Effective property, 7.24 acres, Lot 1, Block 1, Haney Estates of Section 12, Township 122, Eden Lake Township, and the property address is 18053 State Highway 22, Richmond, Minnesota. And then I'll do a roll quick of who was able to visit the site. Jill?
No.
George?
No.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
No.
Ken?
Well, we've been there in the past
Yeah,
2 or
yeah,
3
yeah.
times. So
Yeah,
I didn't,
exactly,
didn't
yeah.
make another
We're
trip.
familiar, yep. Yep, and I was able to visit as well. And so, applicant, can we get your name and address for our public record, please?
Yes, this is Rock Ruland, 18053 State Highway 22, Richmond, Minnesota.
Thank you very much. And then, for your name and address, please.
Gail Ruland, 18053 State Highway 22, Richmond, Minnesota 56368.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And staff to report, please.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I just wanted to add that I did have a page missing in here. It would have been page number 2, which has been added to your packet for tonight, but it was the minutes from the 2018 Board of Adjustment. Just to add that that is in there for anyone's reference to look back at. So the Rulands are requesting to construct a residential dwelling 550 feet from a neighboring feedlot that's registered for 100 animal units or more. The parcel is 7.24 acres in Section 12, Eden Lake Township. The requested 550-foot residential dwelling setback is a 22% deviation from the required 700-foot setback. The proposed residential structure is measuring 36 by 60, and the attached garage 32 by 42 feet. There was a variance granted to Gary and Anita Henges? Sorry if I got that wrong. Henges. In July of 2018, and this was to construct a residential dwelling 550 feet from an animal feedlot registered for 10 animal units or more. This residential structure was not constructed, and instead the existing shed or barn was converted into the residential dwelling being used today. In June of 2022, Rock and Gale applied for the after-the-fact variance to allow the structure to remain as a residential dwelling. This request was denied. Since the original variance granted in 2018 expired on July 27, 2019, the Rulands are now requesting the original variance again. If the variance is not granted, the owner will need to vacate the unpermitted residential dwelling by December 31st, 2023, according to the compliance agreement that was signed on November 2022. The compliance agreement also stated that pasturing of animals in the R1 would need to be discontinued by October 27th, 2023, just to note. This parcel is located within 1,000 feet of the shoreland overlay. There is a septic on the site, and this is located to the northwest side of the parcel. They do have a registered feedlot on the parcel for 2 animal units, and the closest feedlot is currently registered for 100 animal units and was last registered on June 8th, 2021. And the applicant, just to note, did purchase the property October of 2018. I did not have any correspondence, and the alternatives would be to grant or deny the variance request based on the findings of facts. That's all I have for you.
Okay, thank you. Board members, questions for the applicant or staff? Or actually, applicant online or in person here. Anything you wish to say to
Hi. Yeah, I would like to, I don't know, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, I just want to remind the board that this was approved in the past, the exact same variance, and that we're attempting to prevent any kind of erosion, that kind of stuff. The location that we'd like to build on this lot is the best spot, to avoid erosion. And I don't know if you can hear me or not. And then also, to stay out of the wetlands and stuff like that. So we're trying to avoid any kind of damage to the land and keep it pristine or whatever without causing damage to it.
Yep.
Also, there are other homes that are within that, as you can see over to the left on the last picture that was just up. There's a home that is within that range already. To the far left. Yep.
Okay, and again, as reiterating, basically we were granted this July 2018. Again, after that was granted is when we actually purchased the land, and then we also added the well and the septic. Primarily the reason that we have for placing the house where it is due to the fact that in the R1 zoning, there's, if you'll notice on the one, there is also Sean Schlungen has some land has purchased in that R1 area, and so therefore it makes it makes it where we need to actually stay within that 700 foot setback in proximity to the Sean Schlungen property line. There's also wetland area, and also it really to really place the house in the best location would be up in that area that is not wetland, and also again located where we originally proposed it. Our original request when we wanted to actually have the permission to live in our shed was mainly to give us ample time so that we could be able to properly place the house in the location that we wanted it to be. When that was denied, we again were advised to move forward to really have that the original variance request put forward again, so that we could have that renewed, so we can move forward on our request to build our house where it was originally told we could. So. Again, like we said, we also have a feedlot of our own. It's a 2-horse feedlot. Actually, right now we have no animals there, but again, it's because we totally respect and have. I was born and raised on a farm, and again, any kind of disrespect to any farmers in the area would be totally disrespect to my father, who is ailing right now.
Thank you. Questions, comments from board members to staff or the applicant?
Yeah.
Yes, I don't know who can answer this, maybe the staff question on clarification, maybe I missed it, but when the variance was granted, why didn't you act on it?
We had a lot of personal issues taking place at the time. So we did not build at that time. We just didn't. My dad passed away within that time period, and my brother also passed away, and we did hospice care for them. And we were very active in the hospice care for both of those. And it would just not work for us to build at that time.
Yeah, but literally,
we did receive it.
Literally, it ended up that basically his father was an electrician. His brother was one of the major components on us building, and once they both fell ill, it became a situation of us caring more for them than caring for us moving forward.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question for the applicant or on the phone. What prohibits you from being outside that 700-foot line?
When we look at the property, if you see the property, you're going to see that there is a lot of topographical ebbs and flows of the land, along with a considerable amount of like wetland, and then moving past, to be able to even get around the area that is owned by Sean Schlungen is rather prohibitive. And if we built beyond where Sean is, then we'd have to cross over his land to be able to access it, because we'd probably have to access that road that's to the west of our property.
Yeah, bottom line is there's a hill there, and there would be a lot of, I guess if we wanted to build in that other area north, I guess that would be the most practical other area, and that would not. It's real steep there off to it's as you can see, there's kind of a hill and it goes off. If you look at the lines, it
The
goes to the
grade
east,
and,
drops down to the east, and you got the wetlands in there. It just when we originally went to purchase the land, that was why where it's just the most logical spot to build.
yeah. Yeah, if you look beyond that, I mean, literally where that one square is that's Schlangen. And then beyond that, you'll see how it rapidly grades down. And that's because of the fact that there is a really sharp slant to the hill. And so if we wanted to be on the more level ground, we actually had to be between the red and the blue lines for all practicality.
Yeah, and in the process, when the initial variance was granted, we put our well in and put our septic in to be in a decent location for that.
And then all the other family episodes happened and postponed it all.
Any other questions for applicant or staff?
I have a question for staff. On the variance that was granted in 2018, were there any conditions that we had put on that? Okay, I just wanted to verify that we hadn't put any conditions on it.
No, Mr. Chair, and I don't see anything listed here in the minutes from 2018.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if there's no further questions or comments from board members, asking once again for the audience, is there anyone wishing to speak to this variance request? Anyone wishing to speak to the variance request? Anyone wishing to speak to the variance request? Hearing none and seeing none, I would look for a motion to close the public hearing, please.
I so move.
Motion from Dave.
Jill DeLong, I'll second.
Second from Jill. All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
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 Same sign. Motion carries. And now moving towards our finding of facts. The question number one, the proposed use is allowed in the zoning districts in which the subject property is located, yes or no?
Bonnie Mossman, this property is in A40 and R1 portions of it. And housing is permitted in both of those areas.
Yes from Bonnie. Jill?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken? Yes. And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number one. Number two, the variance will be in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official controls. Yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, Rob Schweigel, I'm going to say no. The 700-foot setback is to avoid neighbor problems.
Okay. No from Rob. Jill?
I'm going to say yes. I believe that having that 700-foot required setback is to help keep a distance between residential dwellings and feedlots, but in agricultural areas, oftentimes the people who live there know what they're getting into. They live and breathe in those feedlots themselves. I feel like they've worked hard to fit it to the topography of the land that's there. I'm going to say yes.
All right, a yes from Jill. George?
No.
Dave?
I'll say yes, and some of these things, the feedlot and some of these things have collided a lot because the rules came out after that farm was probably there. And, you know, that's the problem that we have with this committee is we just have to balance that.
Bonnie?
I'm going to say yes for the reason that, yes, it's always nice to try to stay behind that 700-foot setback, but from remembering our discussion from back in 2018, the neighboring farm needs to have a variance regardless of whether they're behind the 500-foot setback or the 700-foot setback. That farm will still have to have a variance if they would want to expand. So it doesn't seem to matter how it would affect that neighboring farm isn't going to be affected.
That's a yes from Bonnie. Ken?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so that's a yes for number 2. Number 3, the variance will be consistent with the comprehensive plan, yes or no?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, I'm going to say yes under agricultural goals 1, 2, 3, and 4, where we want to support agriculture, protect prime farmland, retain areas with economically viable animal agriculture operations, and strive for family farm stability.
All right, a yes from Jill. George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 3. Number 4, the property owner proposes to use the property in a reasonable manner, yes or no?
I thought, sorry, they proposed to build a house. That seems to be a reasonable manner to build a house on your property, and they have a well and a septic system already there.
Yes from Ken. Jill?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 4. Number 5, the plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner, yes or no?
Mr. Chair, Jill DeLong, as the applicant stated, the land is very unique with hills, rocks, wetlands. The neighboring property they'd have to cross if they put their home further away. So I'm going to say yes, it is unique to the property.
All right, a yes from Jill. George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 5. Number 6, the variance, if granted, maintains the essential character of the locality, yes or no?
I would say it doesn't change. It's not going to change anything really because some of the lake lots are in that 700-foot boundary, and it's just not going to change anything.
All right, a yes from Dave. Jill?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so a yes for number 6. Number 7, the need for the variance involves more than economic considerations, yes or no?
Bonnie Mossman, this would be more about the placement of the home, not necessarily any economic difference.
All right, a yes from Bonnie. Jill?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that's a yes for number 7. All questions being answered in the affirmative, we would look for a motion to grant this variance request.
Jill DeLong, I move that we approve a variance to construct a residential dwelling 550 feet from a neighboring feedlot that's registered for 100 animals or more.
All right, we have a motion from Jill. A second?
I'll second that.
All right, a second from George. Remaining votes. Dave?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I am a yes, so your variance request is granted. Any questions, please do contact staff during regular hours.
So, Mr. Chair, I would just like to comment on this one also. It would seem totally ridiculous if this was denied tonight because it was approved previously by the same kind of criteria. So it's kind of a no-brainer in my mind.
But
I disagree.
but
It's
the
been
applicant's
5
the one
years.
that chose not to act on the variance.
That is true, but there's extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
They had a year. They permit's good for a year.
I agree.
I bet. Well, good luck.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Hopefully they won't be back
Yes.
next year.
Moving now to agenda item number 5, minutes from September 22nd, October 27th, and November 21st of 2022. Has anybody had a chance to peruse these?
All at once?
I don't believe I have the November ones, but I have
Had to-
September and
it was
October.
just
That was online.
It was sent out online.
Yep.
Out
Okay.
2 days
Probably
ago.
do 'em as a-
I do have a comment
I-
for the September and October ones. It says that Chairperson Holt
Yep.
called the meeting to order
Yep.
on both of those, but it was me.
Yep. Make a note of that I was not there. I think it was in D.C. at the time.
He might have done it from, remotely. It is hard.
I was in D.C. doing that. Yep, that's exactly what was happening.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
I like how I was absent and I still called the meeting to order. That's dedication. So note those two editorial and clerical comments, but I think, yeah, we can just do that as a slate, September, October, November. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes as corrected?
I'll move to approve those meeting minutes as edited.
All right, motion from George, second.
I'll second.
Second from Bonnie. All those in favor of approving the minutes as
Aye.
corrected?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Anything else for the good of the order?
I'd like to say, Mr. Chair, thank you to Dave Gamrot. Thank you to Ken Mossman. And we do have our new member present. That'd be Amy Sherping, who will be coming next month. And then we will have Mike Prell, who will be on for Planning Commission. So a little bit of turnover based on our normal process. And we have one agenda item for next month. And the meetings will be at 6 p.m. starting next month.
Yep.
And Rob, you had a question? Or
I was just going to say, Mr. Prell's been on the
yeah,
board
previously.
before.
So this will be another round because we rotate Planning Commission members on the Board of Adjustment. And that was Ken's turn last year, and then it'll be District 5, even though now you're District 3, but let's not talk about that.
So what day is the next meeting?
It will be on
9th of February?
Okay. Thank you.
February 9th, it sounds like, is the next meeting. It'll be here, 6 p.m.
So how come everything has gotten so slow? If this wouldn't have happened tonight, there were no applications for tonight.
Dumb luck.
And now you got one for next month, so
Yeah.
you're all going.
Because what happens? You have none, and then you have a ton of them. So that can happen. But at this point, we are really working to make sure applicants understand what it means to come before you. We are trying to go through floodplain and shoreland and minimum standards and non-conforming structures and shore impact zone and all the language. We're really making a concerted effort to, hey, if you don't have to meet, that's not bad. We just are trying to make sure they understand what it means to put in an application and a complete application and the costs associated with all of that. And that doesn't mean just because you apply, you get one. So we're really trying to make sure everyone understands that. A good, complete application. Rob?
And I may have missed it, but the training that's coming up here at the end of January, I never saw time for.
6 p.m. It's funny. I made the correction in the public notice and forgot to send it to you guys, but it'll be a 6 p.m. meeting for that shoreland training with DNR. And then FYI, we're also looking, and Angie and I talked about it today, having a larger legal training for Planning Commission elected and appointed officials. So sometime before March 31st, we are looking to schedule some training with some of the attorneys we've worked with before, Scott Anderson and Jay, I can't think of Jay's last name. Anyway, Scott and Jay. And they typically do a really good job giving us that legal perspective, understanding the decisions that you make and the process. So additional training coming up for everybody.
That should be required because I went to all of those things and you learned a lot of things at those classes.
Yes, so we do appreciate it, and we just really do want everyone to be there if they can, and most people, I can't technically require you to do it, but it's certainly in everyone's best interest to participate.
Yeah. Well, there's a good one at
Feed
College
you
of
and
St.
you
Benedict.
shall
That's
come.
good lunch,
Okay,
yeah.
George is looking for some food. I'll come up with something. I'm kidding. Muffins,
You
maybe.
shouldn't be kidding.
And I've maybe said this before, but I just have concerns about the 6 o'clock time. Not for me personally, but when I think of people that are, and not necessarily for the members of the board, but I'm thinking of the applicants. You know, we have applicants that come from the western end of the county. You get off work at 5 o'clock and you're supposed to be here at 6. So you're taking off work early, or you're, you know, am real concerned about a 6 o'clock start time.
Mr. Chair and Member Mossman, I appreciate that. We have had no statements from applicants about the starting time and moving it to an earlier time. We often get that, why can't we start earlier kind of thing. So we get more people looking to be earlier rather than later because they've got other things to do when they get home and things to organize for the next day. And so we have not heard any concerns. We will keep it in mind. And if we need to amend and adjust, we can do that in the future as well.
I think that the early start time will affect people's desire to do it from the western part of town.
And we have always made accommodation.
Yeah.
So if someone needs to be at the end of an agenda, we have always accommodated that. So
I'm talking about the board members, about somebody wanting to be on the board. They'll say, what time does the meeting start? And you'll say 6:30 or 6 o'clock. Well, 6 o'clock is...
We had more people asking for that time when we did the survey than any other time.
Okay. Well, are they from that end of the county?
That person,
Get more
the
from
persons that responded, we did not have any concern at that point. From my understanding with Angie, I'd have to look at the specific survey.
If there's nothing else, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion from Dave.
Dave just wants to be in the minutes all the time.
All right.
Just
It's
get
a
it over with.
hurrah.
I'm
I
done.
mean,
Well, we came for his cake, and now I find out he
Yeah,
already
I
got the
ate it-
cake.
I
and
ate
ate
it
the
already.
cake.
you know, if I had known that when I was driving by your house,
You
inside,
could have
I
stopped.
could've
I had it.
Dang
Then.
it. Oh, man.
You should have stopped.
Okay,
Second
motion was
From
seconded.
Jill, all those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
It was